Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Psych Talk. Today, we're diving into a topic that impacts hundreds of thousands of children across the United States: the foster care system. On the surface, foster care provides a safe haven for children removed from unsafe or abusive environments. But beneath the noble intent, there are many challenges, particularly the issue of frequent relocations and their profound impact on children. So, what happens when a child is moved from one foster home to another, not just once, but multiple times? And what does it mean for the emotional well being when forming attachments is discouraged to keep the door open for biological parents who may never return? So, let's unpack this together. The foster care system was designed as a temporary solution. So when children are removed from their biological parents due to neglect, abuse, or unsafe conditions, foster care serves as a bridge. So a place for them to stay until it's deemed safe for them to return home or until another permanent solution is found, like adoption. But here's the catch. So the primary goal of foster care is reunification with biological parents. And on paper, this sounds ideal. But in practice, it often means that basically children are kept in limbo, moving from home to home while decisions about their future are being delayed. And you must wonder, why can't a child stay in just one foster home until the biological parents get better or they solve their, issue, whatever is going on? Why can't they stay in just one foster home? Well, the reason why they move the child every couple of months to different foster homes, it's because they don't want the child to form an attachment with any caregiver but their biological parent or their biological caregiver. And so, obviously, you can understand that this can be very detrimental, and also it doesn't make any sense. It's so much better for the child to stay in just one foster home until the biological parents are considered safe to be around. Or, in many cases, maybe it's just better to put them for adoption, because many parents usually, the majority of parents do not get better. There are some cases that they do, but many of these cases, many times that does not happen, correct? We're dealing with people who have had a lot of trauma. They may be drug addicts. They may be very abusive. The statistics of people getting better, it's not very high. And so, for me, it would be so much better to leave the child in just one foster home so that they can form an attachment with the parents that are fostering the child and the siblings that, they may have. So if these foster parents have children, they might form also other relationships. And so they can actually form secure attachments. They can have a normal childhood. They don't have to change, cities very often, because these foster homes is not they're near one another. They might be in different states, different counties, and so they have to change schools pretty frequently. They cannot form friendships at all. They cannot form an attachment to any of the teachers because they're moving constantly. And so it's just like a recipe for disaster. And so imagine being 7 years old and waking up in a home that doesn't feel like yours. You're told to pack your things again. You're moving to another house with new rules, new faces, and new expectations. And this is the reality for many foster children. And again, why does this happen? It's often to prevent children from forming attachments to their foster families. And the logic is that if the biological parents return, the transition will be easier if the child hasn't bonded too deeply with a foster family. But this approach overlooks a crucial truth: that children need stability to thrive. And the numbers are staggering. On average, foster children move between 3 and 5 homes during their time in the system. So some experience even more, and obviously, again, with every move comes a loss. Friendships, schools, communities, and any sense of security that they might have started to build. And for a child, forming attachments is not optional. It's a developmental necessity. But when kids are repeatedly uprooted, their ability to trust and bond with others is severely impacted. So, a child in foster care may already feel abandoned by their biological parents, and every subsequent move feels like another rejection. And this leads to a ripple effect. So, heightened anxiety, difficulty regulating emotions, and a deep fear of forming connections, because connections always seem to end. And so, studies show that children in foster care are at higher risk of developing attachment disorders, depression, and behavioral issues. And it's not just their emotional health. Frequent moves obviously disrupt their education, making it harder for them to succeed academically and socially. And so now let's talk about school. So for most kids, school is a constant, a place where they see the same friends and teachers every day. But for foster children, it's another source of instability. Their life, it's instability. And with every move, they're likely changing schools, leaving behind friends, familiar routines, and teachers who might have been a source of encouragement. This isn't just emotionally exhausting, it can set them back academically. And when you're a foster child, each setback feels magnified. So falling behind in school can lead to feelings of failure, and those feelings often carry into adulthood. Okay, but what happens when reunification doesn't happen? So the hardest part is this. In many cases, biological parents don't return. And while foster children are kept in temporary homes waiting for a reunification that never comes, years pass. And during the time, they're often denied the opportunity to be adopted into a permanent, loving home. And by the time the system finally decides a reunification is not possible, the child may be older, making it harder to find adoptive families. And in some cases, they age out of the system without ever experiencing the stability of a permanent home. And so, how can we do better? Well, first we need to recognize that a child's emotional and developmental needs must take priority. And so if reunification is not a realistic goal, the system should act to find permanent solutions. And so we also need to reframe how we think about attachments. So encouraging children to bond with their foster families, even if temporary, can provide the emotional stability they desperately need. And connections matters, even if they're not lifelong. And so finally, we need to support foster families, and many are doing their best with limited resources and training. So giving them the tools they need, can make a world of difference for the children in their care. But also we need to make sure that these foster homes are safe, because there can be abuse in these foster homes as well. And so that can be even further damaging to the child. And so we know that foster care system exists to protect children, but protecting them isn't just about keeping them safe from harm, obviously. It's about giving them a chance to thrive. And so stability, attachment, and love are essentials. And this is it for this episode. If you are interested in attachments, listen to episode number 52 of Psych Talk podcast. I literally talk about the different types of attachment and how they can show up in also adult relationships. And this can also relate to this episode. That the attachment styles also relate to this episode. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We're called Psych Talk Pod. Thank you.